What's cracking, people? Dougie Brown here. Sorry for the lack of content recently. I've been pretty busy recently, but I'm back and I have plenty of content on the way, so please stay tuned. Today, I want to talk about why I feel that the gaming industry needs limitations. Limitations feeds creativity by giving the developers rules, which can force them to think of ways to either break those rules or bend them. It's through these thought process that magic in game development can happen. I'd like to start off by using Lego as an analogy. I remember back in the day when you had a new type of Lego. I don't personally ever remember having any instructions to say how to build something like a Star Wars X-Wing or a robot dinosaur as your imagination went back then. You had to use your imagination, right? You'd have to look at the pieces that were in front of you and be inventive in order to think of the best way to create the X-Wing that you could. Today, I'm an older man who's got 5 kids to feed, as I keep on saying. I buy them Lego when they want. They open the boxes, look at the step-by-step instructions on how to make something with all the pieces they need and build it. Then they finally, when they've done it, they set that thing aside, content at how perfect they believe it looks, not really willing to add to it or even break it apart sometimes. Do you know what I saw there? I saw there was no real improvising on their part, and that's, I feel that's because they didn't need to. Everything was there for them. There was essentially no brainstorming, but because once again they didn't need to, everything was there for them. They ended up making the same thing every other kid had made, and I feel that's because they were, in a way, never fully committed on a creative level. They were not required to push beyond the boundaries of what they had in front of them. Now, don't get me wrong, they enjoyed making it, of course, but for them it quickly becomes forgettable. The curiosity and the imagination, for the most part, was, I feel, stripped away from them because everything was pretty much already done for them in terms of the instructions. I would say to them, why don't you add, for example, this piece to the side to make it look like a rocket launcher or or something like that. And the majority of the time they would come back to me and say something like, that's not in the instruction book, Daddy. This is how I feel about the industry today, or at least the direction it's been going in for many years. There are many reasons why we look back fondly at mini games and call them classics. Games that changed the industry, games that pushed their consoles to the breaking point, games that done things that you wouldn't have thought possible given the technology at the time, games that included gameplay mechanics that no one had thought of before. Then someone else takes that inspiration and evolves it from that point. And even games that surprise players through little details, something I'll be heavily discussing in my next general discussion. As the industry has rolled on year by year, those types of games, I feel, are becoming more and more uncommon. Now, I know what you're thinking, or you might be thinking along these lines. Graphically, games are amazing today, and because of those graphics and power, we can do anything, right? Indeed, that's true in a sense. Games look amazing. Many almost look like real life now. You can now run around full life like 3D worlds, drive virtual cars that look identical to their real life counterparts. Or even see the depth of wrinkles on some characters' faces. As I've said before, one thing you will find out about me on this channel is that the graphics in a game are not at the top of my priority list when it comes to video games. Once again, don't get me wrong, everyone likes good-looking games. Then I suppose you could argue, what would you class as a good-looking game? As an example, I think Mario Kart 8 on the Wii U, Nintendo Wii U, looks better than The Witcher 3. In fact, I think Mario Kart 8 is arguably one of the best-looking games this generation. Some people will laugh at that perhaps, but sometimes, no matter how graphically intensive a game is, a great art style and presentation can easily top it. Once again, another discussion for a later day perhaps. I believe we have come to a point where we don't need games to look any better than what they do today. I've personally been through all eras where developers looked at the tools they had hit limitations, but wanted to create a certain game, and through sheer willpower and creativity, they would create some of the best gaming software ever made, while still achieving their vision, even if it meant breaking the console in the process. And in that process, you'd see true gaming magic. As a player back then, in a way, you wouldn't really care. You knew that console was being pushed. You knew that developers put their heart and soul into making the best product they could, and for the most part, we soaked it up. Just for this discussion, let me pick Final Fantasy VI as an example. The mainline numbered Final Fantasy games died a slow death after the PlayStation 1, for many reasons in my opinion. But going back, Final Fantasy VI was the game changer for the series, I feel. And I know what you're going to say. Yeah, no, it wasn't. Final Fantasy VII shot the series into new heights. Yes, it did. But I'm not talking about popularity and sales. I'm talking about the game itself and what it achieved on a 16-bit piece of hardware. In this 16-bit title, the developer Square, along with the main composer Nobu Uematsu, created an engrossing title that matches any AAA Hollywood scripted orchestral composed game that is out today, period. I don't care what anyone says. So, I ask myself, how can a 16-bit title engage you in such a way on a technologically inferior hardware released over, 20 years ago or whatever? I think it's pretty simple, really. The developers looked at the tools they had, could see the restrictions, but wanted to create something that was truly special. So they dug deep, poured their hearts and souls into it, and found ways to do it, whilst creating a fantastic game and experience at the same time. The characters in that game have just as much personality, portrayed through simple animations, delicate sounds, and lines of text, than most AAA titles today. The developers had to think of ways to convey emotions, not through hiring Hollywood actors, as I keep on saying, for dialogue, or rigging up high-end facial capture technology, or putting together live orchestras to create what they feel would be an emotional and captivating soundtrack. But it was through thinking outside the box, looking at ways to convey actions through simple things like a single pixel finger moving from left to right, that depending on the moment, conveyed them disagreeing, or perhaps saying something like, sorry, that's not it at all. Or the developers designed their eyes to narrow, that made pixel eyes, let me repeat, to narrow, that made the characters look like they were tired, or angry, or even displayed a sense of caution or sarcasm. Once again, all depending on the moment. They could even make a character look like it was actually sleeping without any new animations. Let me finish here before you decide to laugh or not. They've done this not through making them pull a fully animated blanket over their heads, but by simply having the character walk into the bed from the side, as the game was from a top-down perspective. They'd make the top line of the non-animated blanket the exact height to cover their eyes as they walk through. Which never, their eyes never closed, by the way, and through this little bit of smoke and mirrors, it made them look like they were sleeping. You might laugh at this, but it worked, and it still works today. This was the developers, being forced in a way to think creatively, even for what you would consider to be the simplest of things, and by being fully invested in such little minor details, you get gaming magic happening in all its wonderful illusions. Once again, don't get me wrong, I'm not, let me stress this, I am not chewing out games that love graphically detailed worlds and voice acting, etc. Many games are better for them. What I'm trying to highlight is that I feel like the majority of developers today are no longer required to think outside the box for the most part, and because of this, the magic, the little magic, the soul and passion is not present in many titles. So those simple everyday things don't get the thought that I feel they deserve, which makes them forgettable, like background color. Those little additions that once made you smile are now either too easy or developers don't put the effort into those incidental details that are more important than you think. Stay tuned as I have another video coming on that topic with plenty of footage to highlight such things. I started sensing this, way back in the PS2, GameCube, and Xbox eras. I started getting a feeling that I'd played with these Lego sets before, that the magic was fading. Let me stress this, I'm not condemning that generation entirely, not at all. Some absolutely wonderful software came out of that generation. But what I'm saying is that outside of some select titles, I could see the shortcuts being made, and I could feel the passion and pride fading away in many titles, even from those established developers who originally created that magic. I guess you could see that the race for power and money was starting to take hold back then. Now, if you're thinking that I have my nostalgic goggles on, at least in terms of Final Fantasy VI, then think again. I only dabbled slightly in Final Fantasy VI on the SNES, but never fully played it because I never owned it myself. It later got re-released on the PlayStation 1, but the loading and that version of the game was, utter garbage, so I skipped it. I first sat down and completed Final Fantasy VI when it got released on the Game Boy Advance, and even then I didn't play it immediately. By this time I had already played and completed Final Fantasy 7, 8, 9. I bought 10 day one, but quickly gave up on it for many reasons. Gave 12 a shot, but it got a bit further than I did in 10, but still gave up for many reasons. Then finally got around to playing Final Fantasy VI, and halfway through the game I said to myself, this is hands down the best Final Fantasy. When I personally look at games, I judge them by the consoles that they are released on. I could easily go back to any system in the past and play any game, not even caring about the graphics, because if that game is great at its core and is doing something amazing for that time and for the system that it's on, then I'll play it and I'll salute it for those merits alone. And as I said, those merits are normally based off what the developer put into that game, using their passion, creativity, and sheer love for the industry that they are working in. Like any great inventor in the past, they didn't have all the tools to hand to create what they did. They had to use their imaginations, improvise, and be passionate. This is what led them to create the wonders that we have today, and I fully believe the games industry is exactly the same. This is why I'm worried about the direction the industry is going in now. We got midpoint hardware revisions from both Sony and Microsoft who want to give developers every Lego piece imaginable, instead of letting them think outside the box and improvise with the tools that they already have. This, I can almost guarantee you, will not work, as it's purely based on those lazy developers who no longer have the passion and creativity to think outside the box, as I keep on saying. They will continue to moan for better tools when they struggle to create something great to begin with, or moan that their graphically intensive game hasn't sold enough to make a profit. When you have unlimited resources at your feet, developers feel like they can afford to be sloppy. We've seen it. Having restrictions forces upon developers a set of rules, barriers that can't be broken unless they force themselves to be creative in all aspects. So anyway, this has dragged on a little longer than I thought, so I'll wind it down here. I used Final Fantasy VI just as an example for this video, but I can list a ton of games where developers went, that bit further to create the product that they wanted, given the tools that they had, and truly created some gaming magic. So, what do you think? Do you feel that limitations in gaming creates more innovation in games and pushes the developers harder? Or perhaps you believe, with infinite power comes infinite possibilities, and developers will harness all that power in all aspects of game design. As I said, limitations breeds creativity. There's no doubt about it, which I'm sure every other great inventor who ever created something would agree with. As always, thanks for listening, and I look forward to your comments in the section below. Peace.